All right, I'm gonna let the video upload right quick. All right, this is Trump and the global economy, of course, where we discuss the economies, the president's policies, and how they impact the economy, and all things important to the black community. And of course, Charles Barkley is always important to the black community. This is Trump and the GE. Charles Barkley ethers Kendrick Perkins. These guys have been going at it for a while, back and forth. One from ESPN and one from TNT, of course. And whenever Barkley and Shaq critique Kendrick Perkins' take on things, and Kendrick Perkins does have some wild takes, but they tend to start talking about their respective careers, and clearly Charles Barkley and Shaq have had much better careers statistically than Kendrick Perkins. They also have a lot of, Shaq has of the three. Shaq has the rings as well, but they were all stars where Kendrick Perkins wasn't. So it's not really a fair fight when they start making these ad hominem attacks. But recently, Charles Barkley went in on Kendrick Perkins again, pursuant to his take on the U.S. Olympic basketball team being challenged by Serbia and other teams. And he had some strong words for Charles and Charles's take on why Charles thought that the U.S. should not have been tested. So I'm going to try to share my screen. This is Charles Barkley from the Dan Le Batard Show. So here goes.
You said you were critical of Kerr, and you said that that team should not be tested. And Kendrick Perkins said that was an asinine take. That of course,
well, first of all, don't bring up a guy who averaged 5 points a game. I'm not going to stoop to his level. You average 5 points a game, shut the hell up. Dan, let me ask you a question. Who was the second best player on Serbia?
No, buddy. Look. I don't think they should have been tested either.
No, but my question was: number one, they got Joker, but the second best player on their team was Bogdanovic. Does Bogdanovic make the United States Olympic team? Under no circumstances did he make the Olympic team. I think they played too slow because you could see what Joker was doing. He was milking the clock. He would take the ball out of bounds and roll it up the court. They turned a 40-minute game basically into like a 35 to 37-minute game. So they let them play slow. I think they should have played a lot faster. And that every time we say something now, people go crazy. There's no reason for him not to play Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum would have been the second best player on Serbia. Probably would have been the best player on France. For him not to get any minutes in 2 games, come on, man, that wasn't right. That wasn't fair. If you go into the Olympics, you want to play. You want to play. So I was disappointed Jason didn't get to play. I was disappointed in Halliburton, especially early. Like, if you want to shorten your rotation in the last couple of games, that's fine. But them guys dedicated their summer to the United States to go over there and not get to play, I didn't like that at all.
Charles, would you be willing to take our recommendation?
Okay, so there you go. So basically, Charles Barkley saying that the NBA, the U.S. team should not have been tested given all the talent that they had. They were so much superior to the other teams, and Kendrick Perkins said it was asinine. Frankly, they're both right. The NBA, the U.S. Olympic team had far superior talent than the other team. So there's a perspective that they should not have been tested. However, in my opinion, that the European teams or the international teams tend to play better as a team for some reason. They seem like they're more cohesive, and they seem like they play together all the time. There are a lot of international players in the NBA, but it seems like those international teams are a lot more cohesive. So there's a difference between being an all-star team versus a team that maybe has 1 or 2 all-stars and a bunch of role players. So a bunch of mercenaries versus a real team, and sort of the same sort of dynamic in the late 70s when the Portland Trail Blazers played the Philadelphia 76ers, and they beat the 76ers. The Portland Trailblazers had Bill Walton and Maurice Lucas. Those were the two superstars, and a bunch of role players. Lionel Hollins, the point guard, got it by the name of Bob Gross. Wally Walker was one of the forwards. Dave Twardzik was one of the guards. In the NBA, the 76ers had an all-star team. Dr. J, the best player on the team. George McGinnis, who was a 3-time champion in the ABA. He was a superstar. Henry Bibby played for those UCLA championship teams in college. Lord Free, his name was World B. Free, came off the bench. God named himself World B. Free off the bench, so you know he has an ego. Caldwell Jones and man-child Daryl Dawkins. And they were up on the Portland Trailblazers and eventually lost to him. I was a big 76ers fan, couldn't believe it. How does this all-star team lose to Bill Walton and Maurice Lucas and a bunch of role players? The Trailblazers played better as a team. They were more cohesive, while the 76ers had a bunch of egos out there. And they should have beaten the Trailblazers, but, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the international teams play by international rules, which in some ways could be foreign to the U.S. team. And U.S. teams seem like a bunch of mercenaries just thrown out there. Talent eventually got the goal, but the international teams tend to be more cohesive. I was saying that before the Olympics. So I think Kendrick Perkins and Charles Barkley are both right. However, Kendrick Perkins' words were a bit strong. That Charles Barkley's take was asinine. It's a really strong word, and I think that's what Charles was reacting to. That you called his take asinine, and Barkley got his dander up. So I think a couple things going on. I think Kendrick Perkins is fighting for the job. He's trying to make a living, and he's trying to make a living talking. I think he does a good job. I didn't know he was so mercurial, so affable, but he didn't talk that much when he was a player. Charles Barkley is very affable, and he's very charismatic, and he was very charismatic as a player. He always had interesting takes as a player. People down to interview Barkley. He always had a quote that could move newspapers or get people to tune in to the news or what have you. So it's not really fair. It's not a fair fight because Barkley's very affable, very charismatic. You put him in a room, people are going to be drawn to him, and he's very good at talking. He's quick-witted. He has a lot of country sayings, even though I'm thinking he's from Leeds, Alabama, even though Kendrick Perkins from Texas is not the same. Texas is another country almost where people from the South, like Charles Barkley, Shannon Sharpe, they're very quick-witted, they're very affable, they're very charismatic, and people are just going to be drawn to those guys. I think Shannon is getting a little sensitive. Has gotten a little sensitive lately, but it's not fair to try to make a living talking versus Charles Barkley. And Kendrick Perkins trying to make a living talking. He didn't talk that much when he was a player. I don't even remember the guy even giving interviews. And he's trying to make a living at it. With Charles Barkley, I think it's natural for him to talk basketball, natural for him to talk in general. Kendrick Perkins just doesn't have the personality that Charles Barkley has, so it's not really fair. And Kendrick Perkins trying to make a living talking, and he may feel pressure to say some outlandish things for ratings. The other thing is that they both work for two different studios. Barkley only has to work 6-7 months out of the year, and TNT may have a couple games a week, 2 or 3 games a week. ESPN is on 24 hours a day. Just all they do is talk sports, and they have to get the ratings up. And they go year round. So Perkins is working year round. Well, Charles Barkley only has to work maybe 6-7 months out of the year, a couple days a week. With ESPN, their whole job, their whole format is around sports. People are cutting the cord. ESPN is losing money. Revenue is falling. People aren't watching ESPN like they used to. The days back when I was in college, you rush home at 7:30 to catch the highlights. People can watch the highlights on their phone or on their computer. Kids are cutting the cord. Nobody's watching SportsCenter like they used to. And so Kendrick Perkins could feel pressure to say some of these outlandish things for ratings, and they're laying people off left and right. Jalen Rose is gone. Van Gundy, from the former coach for the Knicks, Mark Jackson. They laying off a lot of high-priced talent, a lot of talented people. Mark Jackson and Van Gundy, Jeff Van Gundy, Jalen Rose. And Jalen Rose took it very personally. You don't see Jamel Hill there anymore. You don't see Michael Smith there anymore. So ESPN's trying to save money, and if they don't get the ratings up, who knows who could be next? I think Stephen A. Smith's job is solidified, but Kendrick Perkins could be next. If they don't keep those ratings up, and he may feel pressure to say a lot of outlandish things to keep the ratings up, first of all. And secondly, he just doesn't, he's not as mercurial as Mark Barkley. He's not as affable as Barkley. So it's not really a fair fight. And favor's not fair. Charles Barkley is favored by the guards in terms of having a big personality, very charismatic, and people are just drawn to this guy. So I think you keep that into perspective that Kendrick Perkins may feel a little pressure to say some outlandish things for ratings and may feel pressure to have some crazy takes that Barkley doesn't have the pressure to do because his role is solidified. The best show in basketball with him and Ernie and Shaq and Kenny, the best show in basketball. And I don't think they have the same pressure that the guys at ESPN are having because people are cutting the cord. ESPN is hemorrhaging cash. Disney's trying to figure out what to do with ESPN. They'll land people off left and right. If they don't get the ratings up, Kendrick Perkins could be out there next. You never know who's next, and there's a lot of insecurity over there as far as when the axe will fall or who will fall on next. If they can cut Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, they can get rid of Kendrick Perkins too. So that's sort of my take. Fair ain't fair. And Barkley's he's very affable, quick-witted. Should probably give Kendrick Perkins a little break, given the situation that they're in over at ESPN. And Perkins is not as good as talking as Barkley or myself, because I'm from Virginia, so I'm quick-witted as well. Charles Barkley is probably the second most affable person in the media. But that's my take. That's Trump and the GE, Charles Barkley, Ethers, Kendrick Perkins. Thank you for listening. Thank you. If you're listening, Charles, get that man a break, please.